The law office felt like a mausoleum, all dark wood and heavy silence. I sat between my parents, still wearing the black suit from Grandpa's funeral 3 days earlier, trying to process what the lawyer had just read. According to the will, I had inherited Morrison Agricultural Equipment, the entire operation. "There must be some mistake," my father said, his voice tight with disbelief. My father would never leave the business to Jake. He's barely 26 and has no experience running anything. Mr. Hartwell, the family attorney who had served Grandpa for 30 years, adjusted his glasses and reread the relevant section. "The will is quite clear, Robert. Your father leaves the entirety of Morrison Agricultural Equipment, including all dealership locations, inventory, real estate, and associated farmland, to his grandson, Jake Morrison." I stared at the mahogany table, trying to understand what this meant. Morrison Agricultural Equipment wasn't just a business. It was an empire. Grandpa had built it from a single John Deere dealership into the largest agricultural equipment network in 3 states. The company owned 12 dealership locations, employed over 400 people, and generated annual revenues exceeding $300 million. My mother's face had gone pale. "This is ridiculous. Jake dropped out of business school and works as a junior accountant. He has no idea how to run a company this size." She wasn't wrong about my qualifications, at least on paper. I had left college after 2 years to take care of Grandpa when he had his first heart attack. While my parents had been busy with their own careers in the city, I'd spent 3 years helping him manage his recovery and gradually taking on more responsibilities around the business, but I had never imagined he'd leave me ever. "Mr. Hartwell," I said, finding my voice, "are you sure there isn't some provision for my parents? Some kind of partnership arrangement?" The lawyer shook his head. "Your grandfather was very specific. The business goes to you, along with the 10,000 acres of farmland and the family." My parents exchanged a look that I recognized from childhood, the look that said I had disappointed them. Chapter 2: Family Tensions. The drive back to Grandpa's house, my house now, was silent except for the sound of my mother crying softly in the passenger seat. Dad's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and I could practically feel the anger radiating. When we arrived at the sprawling farmhouse that had been Grandpa's home for 50 years, my parents immediately went into crisis mode. Dad started making phone calls to lawyers while Mom paced the kitchen, muttering about undue influence and diminished capacity. "Jake," Dad said after ending his 3rd call, "we need to talk about this situation rationally. You can't possibly run Morrison Agricultural Equipment. You don't have the experience, the education, or the business connections." "I've been working with Grandpa for 3 years, I said. "I know more about the operation than you think." Mom laughed bitterly. "You've been playing assistant, Jake. That's not the same as running a $300 million company." Their words stung because part of me agreed with. I had dropped out of college, I was working an entry-level job, and I had never shown any particular business acumen. From the outside, it did look like Grandpa had made a terrible mistake. "Maybe we could work together," I suggested. "You both have business experience. We could be partners." Dad shook his head. "That's not how inheritance law works, son. If the will stands, you own everything. We would be working for you." The idea clearly horrified them. Their 26-year-old son, the family disappointment, would be their boss. The power dynamic would be completely reversed. "We're going to contest the will," Mom announced. "Your grandfather wasn't thinking clearly in his final year. The stress of the business, his health problems, it obviously affected his judgment." I wanted to argue, but I understood their perspective. From their point of view, I was the least qualified person in the family to inherit such a massive responsibility. They had both built successful careers in corporate America, while I had been content to work small jobs and help take care of an aging grandfather. But something nagged at me about their certainty that Grandpa had made a mistake. He had been sharp as a tack right up until his final week, making strategic decisions and planning for the company's future with the same clarity he had always shown. Maybe there was more to this inheritance than any of us understood. Chapter 3: Discovering the Business. The next morning, I drove to the main Morrison Agricultural Equipment dealer for the first time as the owner. The facility was massive, a sprawling complex of showrooms, service bays, and parts warehouses that covered nearly 50 acres. Rows of bright green John Deere tractors, combines, and implements filled the lot like an army of mechanical soldiers. Sarah Martinez, the general manager who had worked for Grandpa for 15 years, met me at the main entrance. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s who knew every aspect of the operation. "Jake," she said, extending her hand, "I'm sorry for your loss. Your grandfather was a remarkable man." "Thank you, Sarah. I have to admit, I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed by all this." She smiled sympathetically. "That's understandable. But you should know that your grandfather talked about you constantly. He was very proud of the work you did with him these past few years." We spent the morning touring the facility. The scale of the operation was staggering. The main showroom alone contained millions of dollars worth of equipment, from compact utility tractors for small farms to massive combines that cost more than most people's houses. "Your grandfather built something special here," Sarah explained as we walked through the service department. "We don't just sell equipment. We provide complete agricultural solutions: financing, maintenance, parts, training, even agronomic consulting." In the parts warehouse, I met Tom Chen, the inventory manager who had been with the company for 20 years. He showed me the computerized system that tracked millions of parts across all 12 locations. "Mr. Morrison always said that farmers can't wait for parts," Tom explained. "If their equipment breaks down during harvest, every day costs them money. We stock everything they need, when they need it." As the day progressed, I began to understand the complexity of what Grandpa had built. This wasn't just a dealership. It was a comprehensive support system for the agricultural community. The company employed mechanics, salespeople, finance specialists, agronomists, and logistics coordinators. It was a small city dedicated to keeping farmers productive. But I also began to see the challenges. The agricultural equipment industry was facing pressure from corporate consolidation, changing technology, and economic uncertainty. Running this operation would require not just business skills, but deep understanding of farming, finance, and technology. By the end of the day, I felt both inspired and terrified. Chapter 4. The Legal Challenge. 2 weeks after the will reading, my parents filed a formal challenge in probate. They hired one of the most expensive estate attorneys in the state and prepared to argue that Grandpa had been mentally incompetent when he made his final will. I sat in my own lawyer's office, a young woman named Jennifer Walsh who specialized in estate law, trying to understand what we were up against. "Your parents are claiming that your grandfather suffered from dementia and that you exercised undue influence over him during his final years," Jennifer explained. "They're arguing that no rational person would leave such a valuable business to someone with your limited experience." "But Grandpa was sharp until the end," I protested. "He was making business decisions, planning expansions, negotiating contracts. The company had its best year ever under his leadership." "That's exactly what we need to prove," Jennifer said. "We need to demonstrate that your grandfather was mentally competent and that his decision was rational, even if it seems surprising to others." Over the next few weeks, I gathered evidence of Grandpa's His medical records showed no signs of cognitive decline. His business records demonstrated sophisticated strategic thinking. His employees testified to his continued involvement in day-to-day operations. But my parents had their own evidence. They pointed to my college dropout status, my lack of business experience, and what they characterized as my failure to launch as an adult. They argued that Grandpa had been manipulated by sentiment and family loyalty rather than making a sound business decision. The legal battle was expensive and emotionally draining. Depositions, document reviews, and expert witnesses consumed months of time and tens of thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, I was trying to learn how to run a business that I might not even get to keep. Sarah Martinez became my unofficial mentor during this period. She taught me about inventory management, customer relationships, and the seasonal rhythms of the agricultural business. "Your grandfather didn't make impulsive decisions," she told me one afternoon. "If he left you the business, he had good reasons. You just need to figure out what they were." That comment stuck with me. Maybe the key to winning the legal challenge wasn't just proving Grandpa's competence. Maybe it was understanding why he had chosen me over my obviously more qualified parents. Chapter 5. Hidden Preparations. As I spent more time at the dealership, I began to notice things that suggested Grandpa had been preparing for this transition longer than anyone realized. In his office, I found training materials he had compiled specifically for me. Detailed explanations of every aspect of the business, from financing structures to supplier relationships. His computer contained folders labeled with my name, filled with strategic plans, market analyses, and succession planning documents. It was clear that he had been grooming me for leadership, even though I hadn't fully understood it at the time. "He started putting these together about 2 years ago," Sarah revealed when I showed her the files. "He said he wanted to make sure you understood every aspect of the operation." I also discovered that Grandpa had been gradually shifting responsibilities to me without making it obvious. The inventory management system I thought I was just helping with, I had actually been running it for the past year. The customer relationships I thought I was just observing, I had been the primary contact for several major accounts. "You've been doing the job already," Tom Chen told me. "You just didn't realize it." The revelation was both encouraging and overwhelming. Grandpa had been testing me, training me, and gradually increasing my responsibility. But he had done it so subtly that even I hadn't recognized the scope of what I was learning. My parents' lawyers tried to characterize this as evidence of manipulation, proof that Grandpa had been unduly influenced by my presence during his final year. But I began to see it differently. This wasn't manipulation. It was mentorship. Grandpa had been preparing me for this responsibility because he believed I could handle it. The question was whether I believed it too. During this period, I also learned more about my parents' relationship with the business. They had both left the agricultural community as soon as they could, pursuing careers in finance and consulting that took them far from the farming world. They visited Grandpa regularly, but they had never shown interest in the day-to-day operations of Morrison Agricultural Equipment. Your father always said the farm equipment business was too small for his ambitions, Sarah mentioned during one of our conversations. He wanted to work on Wall Street, deal with bigger numbers. It was becoming clear that Grandpa's decision wasn't just about my qualifications, it was about my commitment to the agricultural community that had been his life's work. Chapter 6. The Mysterious Clause. 3 months into the legal battle, Jennifer Walsh called me with news that would change everything. "Jake, I've been going through your grandfather's will with a fine-tooth comb, and I found something interesting. There's a clause buried in the legal language that I initially..." She read me the relevant section. "In the event that the primary beneficiary's inheritance is challenged by any family member, a sealed letter containing additional instructions shall be opened and read to all parties involved in the dispute." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means your grandfather anticipated this exact situation. He left a letter that can only be opened if someone contests the will." The letter was in the possession of Mr. Hartwell, the family attorney, sealed in an envelope marked, "To be opened only in case of inheritance dispute." The probate judge ordered that it be read in open court, with all parties present. The courtroom was packed when Mr. Hartwell stood to read Grandpa's final message. My parents sat with their legal team, confident that whatever the letter contained would support their case. I sat with Jennifer, nervous about what Grandpa might have revealed. "My dear family," Mr. Hartwell began, "if you are hearing this letter, it means that my decision to leave Morrison Agricultural Equipment to Jake has been challenged. I anticipated this possibility, and I want to explain my reasoning." The letter went on to detail Grandpa's observations about each family member's relationship with the business and the agricultural community. He praised my parents' professional achievements but noted their lack of interest in continuing the family's agricultural legacy. "Robert and Linda have built successful careers in the corporate world, and I am proud of their accomplishments. However, they have never shown genuine interest in the farming community that Morrison Agricultural Equipment serves. They see the business as a financial asset rather than a mission." But the real bombshell came in the next paragraph. "Furthermore, I have recently discovered that Robert has been in discussions with corporate buyers about selling Morrison Agricultural Equipment after my death. He believes the business would be more valuable as part of a larger conglomerate, despite the fact that such a sale would eliminate hundreds of local jobs and reduce service to our farming customers." The courtroom erupted. My parents' faces went white as Grandpa's letter revealed their secret plans. Chapter 7. The Truth Revealed. The letter continued with devastating detail about my parents' plans for the business. I have copies of emails and meeting notes that show Robert has been negotiating with AgriCorp International for over a year. The proposed sale would net the family approximately $400 million, but would result in the closure of 8 of our 12 locations and the elimination of over 300 jobs. I stared at my parents in shock. They had been planning to sell Grandpa's life work to a corporate conglomerate, destroying the very thing he had spent 50 years building. Jake, on the other hand, has shown genuine commitment to our mission of serving the agricultural community. During his 3 years working with me, he has demonstrated not only competence, but also the values that are essential to our success: integrity, service, and respect for the farming families who depend on it. The letter went on to detail specific examples of my work with customers, my understanding of the business operations, and my commitment to the agricultural community. Grandpa had been documenting my progress far more carefully than I had realized. I am confident that Jake will preserve the culture and mission of Morrison Agricultural Equipment while adapting to the challenges of the modern agricultural industry. He has the technical knowledge, the interpersonal skills, and most importantly, the heart to continue our family's legacy of service. But the most shocking revelation came at the end of the letter. To ensure that Morrison Agricultural Equipment remains independent and continues to serve our community, I have included a clause in Jake's inheritance that prohibits the sale of the business to any corporate entity for a period of 25 years. This restriction is binding and cannot be overturned by any court or legal proceeding. The courtroom was silent as the implications sank in. Not only had Grandpa chosen me over my parents, but he had specifically structured the inheritance to prevent them from selling the business even if they had inherited. My parents' lawyer immediately requested a recess. Their entire case had just collapsed, and they needed time to figure out their next move. As we left the courtroom, my father wouldn't look at me. My mother was crying, but I couldn't tell if it was from anger, embarrassment, or grief. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt like I truly understood why Grandpa had chosen me. Chapter 8. Family Reckoning. That evening, my parents came to the farmhouse for what would be the most difficult conversation of our lives. They sat in the same kitchen where I'd eaten countless meals with Grandpa, looking defeated and ashamed. "Jake," my father began, "I owe you an explanation." "I think Grandpa's letter explained everything pretty clearly," I replied. "Not everything." Dad ran his hands through his hair, suddenly looking much older than his 55 years. "The truth is, your mother and I have been struggling financially for years. We made some bad investments, took on too much debt. When we started thinking about Dad's estate, we saw it as our salvation." Mom spoke up for the first time. "We convinced ourselves that selling the business would be better for everyone. The money could set up the whole family for life, and we thought the corporate buyers would run things more efficiently." "But you never asked what Grandpa wanted," I said. "You never considered what the sale would mean to the employee, the customers, the community." "You're right," Dad admitted. "We were so focused on our own problems that we lost sight of what the business really meant to Dad, to the people who work there, to the farmers who depend on it." The conversation was painful but necessary. My parents had to confront the fact that their financial problems had clouded their judgment and led them to betray everything Grandpa had worked for. "I'm sorry, Jake," Mom said, tears streaming down her face. "We were wrong about you, wrong about the business, wrong about everything." "I don't want your apology," I said. "I want your support. This business is bigger than any of us, and I'm going to need help to run it successfully." Over the next few hours, we began to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of honesty. My parents agreed to drop their legal challenge and to respect Grandpa's decision. In return, I offered them consulting roles in the business, positions that would use their corporate experience, while respecting my ultimate authority as owner. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. We were family, and despite everything that had happened, we needed to find a way to work together. The legal battle was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. Chapter 9. Taking Control. With the inheritance dispute resolved, I could finally focus on actually running Morrison Agricultural Equipment. The first few months were a steep learning curve, but I had excellent support from the existing management team. Sarah Martinez became my unofficial chief operating officer, helping me understand the financial complexities of the business. Tom Chen taught me about inventory management and supply chain logistics. The sales team shared their knowledge of customer relationships and market dynamics. "Your grandfather built a great foundation," Sarah told me during one of our weekly strategy meetings, "but the industry is changing rapidly. We need to adapt to survive." She was right. The agricultural equipment industry was facing unprecedented challenges. Corporate consolidation was reducing competition. New technologies were changing how farmers operate, and economic pressures were forcing many family farms out of business. But I also saw opportunities. Our size and independence allowed us to be more responsive to customer needs than the large corporate dealers. Our deep roots in the agricultural community gave us credibility that outsiders couldn't match. I began implementing changes gradually, always with input from the experienced team members. We expanded our precision agriculture services, helping farmers use GPS and data analytics to optimize their operations. We developed financing programs specifically designed for young farmers trying to get started. Most importantly, we maintained the culture of service that Grandpa had established. Every employee understood that our success depended on the success of the farmers we serve. The business responded well to these changes. Sales increased, customer satisfaction improved, and employee morale remained high. I was beginning to feel confident that I could not only preserve Grandpa's legacy, but build upon it. My parents kept their word about supporting the business. Dad's financial expertise helped us restructure some debt and improve our cash flow. Mom's marketing background contributed to a successful advertising campaign that emphasized our local roots and community commitment. Working together wasn't always easy, but we were learning to respect each other's strengths and contributions. Chapter 10. Growing into Leadership. A year after taking over Morrison Agricultural Equipment, I faced my first major crisis. A severe drought had devastated crops across our region, leaving many farmers unable to make their equipment payments. Several competitors had responded by aggressively repossessing equipment, but I knew that wasn't the right approach. "We need to work with our customers, not against them," I told the management team during an emergency meeting. "These farmers are our neighbors, our friends. They'll remember how we treat them during the tough times." We developed a comprehensive drought relief program, offering payment deferral, reduced interest rates, and flexible refinancing options. It was expensive in the short term, but it preserved our relationships with customers who would be loyal for decades. The program was a huge success, both financially and in terms of community goodwill. When the drought ended and farmers had good harvests again, they remembered who had stood by them. Our market share increased significantly as customers switched from competitors who had been less understanding. Your grandfather would be proud, Sarah told me. You made the right decision for the right reasons. The experience taught me that leadership wasn't just about making profitable decisions. It was about making decisions that reflected your values and served the long-term interests of all stakeholders. I also began to understand why Grandpa had chosen my parents. It wasn't just about business qualifications or family loyalty. It was about having the right perspective on what the business was supposed to accomplish. My parents had seen Morrison Agricultural Equipment as a financial asset to be optimized. I saw it as a mission to be fulfilled. That difference in perspective made all the difference in how we approached every decision. As the business continued to grow and evolve, I started thinking about my own legacy. What would I want to pass on to the next generation? How could I ensure that the values Grandpa had instilled would survive long after I was gone? Those questions would become increasingly important as I faced new challenges and opportunities in the years ahead. Chapter 11. Building for the Future. 3 years into my tenure as owner of Morrison Agricultural Equipment, I made the decision to expand into renewable energy. Many farmers were interested in wind and solar projects, both as additional income sources and as ways to reduce their operating costs. It's a natural extension of our mission, I explained to the board of advisors I had established. We help farmers succeed, and renewable energy is becoming an important part of agricultural economics. The expansion required significant investment and new expertise, but it aligned perfectly with our core values of innovation and service to the agricultural community. We partnered with renewable energy companies to offer turnkey solutions for farmers interested in wind or solar projects. The initiative was successful beyond our expectations. Within 2 years, our renewable energy division was generating substantial revenue and had positioned Morrison Agricultural Equipment as a leader in agricultural sustainability. My parents had initially been skeptical of the expansion, worried about the financial risks and the departure from our traditional focus. But as the results became clear, they became strong supporters of the strategy. You're thinking like an entrepreneur, not just a business manager, Dad told me. That's exactly what this company needs. I also began investing in employee development and community outreach. We established scholarship programs for students pursuing agricultural careers, sponsored youth farming programs, and supported local agricultural research initiatives. These investments didn't always have immediate financial returns, but they strengthened our relationships with the agricultural and helped ensure a pipeline of future customer and employees. Your grandfather always said that businesses have responsibilities beyond just making money, Sarah reminded me during one of our planning sessions. You're carrying on that tradition. The company culture remained strong, with low employee turnover and high customer satisfaction scores. We had successfully navigated the transition from Grandpa's leadership to mine, while maintaining the values and mission that made us special. But I knew that the real test would come during the next economic downturn or industry crisis. That's when our commitment to our values would be truly tested. Chapter 12. The Next Generation. 5 years after inheriting Morrison Agricultural Equipment, I married Elena Rodriguez, an agricultural engineer who shared my passion for farming and rural community. She brought her own expertise to the business, helping us develop precision agriculture services and sustainable farming practices. We were expecting our first child, and I found myself thinking more about legacy and succession planning. I didn't want to repeat the mistakes that had led to the conflict over Grandpa's will. We need to be intentional about preparing the next generation, Elena said during one of our conversations about the future, not just financially, but in terms of values and understanding. I began documenting the lessons I had learned, the principles that guided our decision-making, and the vision for the company's future. I wanted to ensure that whoever eventually inherited the business would understand not just what they were getting, but why it mattered. My relationship with my parents had continued to evolve and improve. They had become valuable advisors and had found meaningful roles within the organization. The crisis over the inheritance had ultimately strengthened our family bonds by forcing us to be honest about our motivations and values. I'm proud of what you've built, Mom told me during our son's first birthday party. You've proven that Grandpa made the right choice. The business continued to thrive under my leadership. We had expanded to 15 locations, employed over 600 people, and maintained our position as the leading agricultural equipment region. More importantly, we had preserved the culture of service and community commitment that Grandpa had established. But success brought new challenges. Corporate competitors were becoming more aggressive, technology was changing rapidly, and the agricultural industry faced ongoing consolidation pressures. I knew that the next decade would require even more innovation and adaptation. The key would be maintaining our core values while embracing the changes necessary to remain competitive. As I looked toward the future, I felt confident that Morrison Agricultural Equipment would continue to serve the agricultural community for generations to come. Chapter 13. Legacy Fulfilled. 10 years after that shocking day in the lawyer's office, I stood in the main showroom of our newest dealership location, watching my 5-year-old son climb on a miniature John Deere tractor. Elena was beside me, pregnant with our second child, and my parents were helping their grandson navigate the toy equipment. Morrison Agricultural Equipment had grown into something even Grandpa couldn't have imagined. We now operated 18 locations across 4 states, employed over 800 people, and had expanded into renewable energy, precision agriculture, and agricultural financing. Annual revenues had grown to over $500 million. But more importantly, we had maintained the values and mission that made the company special. Our employees were proud to work for us. Our customers trusted us, and our communities benefited from our presence. "Daddy, can I drive a real tractor someday?" my son asked, his eyes bright with excitement. "Someday," I told him. "But first you need to learn why we do this work, not just how to do it." The clause in Grandpa's will that had prevented the sale of the business would expire in 15 more. By then, my son would be old enough to begin learning about the company, just as I had learned during those summers with Grandpa. I had already begun updating the succession planning documents, incorporating the lessons I had learned about family dynamics, business leadership, and the importance of shared values. I wanted to ensure that the next transition would be smoother than mine had been. My parents had become integral parts of the business, contributing their expertise while respecting the leadership structure Grandpa had established. The crisis over the inheritance had ultimately made our family stronger by forcing us to confront our differences and find common ground. "You know," Dad said, joining me as we watched his grandson play, "I understand now why Dad chose you. It wasn't just about business skills or family loyalty. It was about having the right heart for this work." "I'm still learning," I replied. "Every day brings new challenges. That's what makes you the right person for the job," he said. "You never stop trying to do." As I looked around the showroom filled with the latest John Deere equipment, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The inheritance that had seemed like a mistake to everyone else had turned out to be exactly what Grandpa intended: a test of character, a lesson in values, and a foundation for the future. The business would continue to evolve and grow, but its core mission would remain unchanged: serving the agricultural community with integrity, innovation, and commitment. That was Grandpa's true legacy, and it was now mine to preserve and pass on.